Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to Circuit of the Americas for the continuation of the opening weekend of the SRO Motorsports America event here. And, of course, we are here for TC America. The touring cars are about to come out. And as has been the case pretty much the whole weekend, the weather here, damp and cold. Not chilly, cold. And it is following through, at least thus far today. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Creamer, joined by Calvin Fish. Ryan Marine is with us down in a chilly pit lane. We'll try and keep him busy just to keep him warm.
Right.
Here's a look at the pole sitter. One of the big stories here, Paul Terry had a frustrating race yesterday, got caught up a couple of times and stuff. When he decided to put the hammer down, boy, did he.
Yeah, I mean, his fastest lap that sets the grid for today was 9/10 clear of the rest of the field, so that is certainly ominous. Obviously, a little bit different track conditions here today. Everyone on the slick Pirelli P0s to start this, but it's not an ideal situation. It's very cold out still, early morning here, of course, and a lot of rain and drizzle overnight, so they're going to have to tread carefully over these opening laps.
Yeah, and it is damp. There's no question about that, so that's going to be an issue. We get a report now that there are two cars that may have decided to go onto the wets. We'll talk about that. The fact, Paul Terry finished 7th, so he had a great run. But you see, starting on the outside of the front row, the gentleman who finished 3rd in the Gen Racer, that is the Genesis Coupe, is Jeff Rica, and he showed some real pace yesterday. And just near the end of the race, he started to fall off just a little bit. A little bit heavier car because it's a little bit more powerful in these damp conditions. That may be strong. And Toby Grahovic was a rocket ship at the end of this one.
He really was. It was a fierce battle with Johann Schwarzer eventually getting the victory, but Toby was all over him, and Jeff Ricker was right there at the end. It was the proverbial blanket finish at the finish with 3 cars separated by about half a second.
And then here is Johann Schwartz, who was the race winner yesterday, ending up starting in the 4th spot. And they struggled a little bit with some fuel pickup yesterday, but they were able to hang on, as you said, under immense pressure. Boy, was it a cut-and-thrust battle, hanging on over Toby Grahovic. Great run here. Local driver making his first start in the championship, going for the full season. Joseph Federal in the Tech Sport Racing Nissan was quick.
He was really quick. This is his local track, Greg, so he's really relishing this car. He said he's really enjoying the platform here. He knows the track well, so he could really be a force here today and maybe knocking on the door of a podium.
Right here, Peter Atwater, who finished the race in 11th yesterday, but had a quick lap, allowing him to start in the 6th spot in his new light. That's the M235 IR Cup machine, and he is somebody that we're going to be keeping an eye on here. One of the reasons being in these dark conditions, it's really easy to see that car. We like that. Up next, the number 82 of Cameron Evans, the Copart Bimmerworld M240 IR Cup car. With their reports, he's one of the drivers who may have opted to start on the wets.
Well, we'll see what happens. He could certainly be cutting through the field very quickly in the opening laps, but the weather forecast looks pretty good for the day, so when you get this many cars out there, there's going to be a dry line forming very quickly.
Here's a look at the number 20 of Robert Nimkoff, the Auto Technic M235 IRC. Good run yesterday, finishing in the 5th spot. Didn't quite get the lap he wanted during the race, and remember, it is the fast lap for each driver in that first race that determines where they start, so he ends up back in the 8th spot. And then another guy who had a little frustrating day yesterday had that spin on really cold tires on the pace lap with Steve Strymer, switching this year from the Nissan over to the Rooster Hall team in the BMW M235 IR. Ended up struggling, dropping back into 14th, but we know he's got pace, Cal.
Yeah, he does. He has a lot of experience, and he's just getting to grips with his car, and I think it kind of threw him for a loop there, having that quick spin on the formation lap. Luckily, we had a delayed start, and he caught up with the pack, but it was a long day for him.
And then the second of the Copart Bimmerworld cars, and how nice is it to say Bimmerworld back in touring car? That's fantastic. Chandler Hull in the 94 finished 12th yesterday, got in a decent lap. He's the other driver that we're hearing reports could be starting on the wet tires, trying to make up a little ground early in this one. And then this is an interesting story. The number 4 of Zane Hodgson, Lone Star Racing has long been a entrant in GT4 and GT racing, in the GT3 category in particular, and they have opened up a touring car program here, and Zane doing the driving for Lone Star Racing in the BMW. That's an M235 IR chassis. And one thing you're going to notice as we're going through this, folks, is another one here, Mosey Uretsky in the Murillo M235 IR. That BMW M Cup platform is a fairly dominant choice, isn't it?
That's right. We've got 17 entries, 14 of them are the BMW platform.
Yep, and another one's coming up here. Great to have the number 84, Richard Zulman, back. He ran one event last year, 2 starts, and really showed some good speed and decided, I'm enjoying this. And he's a fairly late starter into racing, but seems to be a pretty quick study. And, of course, he's got the tutelage of Johann Schwartz as well. And Richard had himself a busy race yesterday and finished in the 13th spot, which is where he will start today. And then another newcomer to the championship in the Auto Technic M235 IRC is the 52 of Tom Capizzi. Put together a really solid run, and his first start, obviously, he'd like to be up just a little bit farther. And then the next group of cars that are at the back of the field, the 09 here, Greg Nitzkowski. That's the DRS, Dynamic Racing Systems entry. John Allen in the 21 in the Auto Technic entry, and Bruce Wexler in the other of the DRS cars. All had fairly fraught races and found themselves really doing some battling. John Allen, in particular, was in the wars, to be sure. And I'm sure he's looking forward to a clean race here. And you notice the big A on the hood of that car. He is a graduate of the engineering school at Alabama and is a huge alumni supporter of that program. He's flying the colors for that university here today. And here's Wexler, who ended up not being able to finish the race yesterday. Had an incident in that Dynamic Racing Solutions car and ended up not being classified. So he definitely would like to step that up a little bit better today.
Field rolls off, and we'll get a little feel for the racetrack. As we mentioned, you said there's a couple of cars look like they may be on wet weather tires, so they may be a force early on, but very cold. So you see him there, Paul Terry, really sideways. They're just trying to put the power down, and you'd have to think in these conditions maybe Johann Schwartz, who's coming off that victory here yesterday, could be the man, because he is known as the Drift King. He likes these slippery conditions. And ironically, Jeff Ricker, I spoke to him on the pre-grid, Greg, and we talked about his balance in the car yesterday. Had a lot of understeer early on. Well, he had the car set up for those wet qualifying conditions. Didn't have a chance to revert back to dry settings, so he said it really created a lot of understeer. Finally, the car came good at the end. He said, ironically, today we put a dry setup on.
Of course.
And, of course, it's a little bit damp here this morning.
Well, if this track dries, as the reports are, it may well do that. We can expect him then to get quicker as this race unfolds. For sure, and he's always quick and had to drive around those issues. And you're right about Schwartz. I mean, in the damp practice sessions, he was really strong, and he's very comfortable with that car, getting a lot of rotation in it, and it should be fun to watch here, certainly in these early laps. That and the fact that we got a couple of those cars starting on wets, and if there's an opportunity here, this is good. Not seeing a lot of spray off of these tires right now at all, so it would indicate the track isn't in bad shape.
No, I think it's really going to come down to temperature, and there's kind of you got to get it over the hump, so to speak. You need to load the tire enough to get the tire temperature that will give you grip, but if you're underneath that, you're tiptoeing around, you never get the tire in a sweet spot where it wants to work.
And oftentimes you'd almost prefer it to be either really wet or just absolutely dry. This kind of condition, the track sometimes just gets greasy, is just the best way to put it, and it can catch you out.
It really can, and we just got to hope that everyone treads carefully and just gets a feel for this racetrack. But up into turn one, I mean, that's where it gets tricky, when you're suddenly having to add a lot of steering input. There's traffic around you, and the front end will not respond. We've got to look for that as they try and get through that apex area as they climb the hill.
And this is that long run from turn 11, the longest straight on the track. Absolutely flat-out blast down into a huge overtaking area. If you can get a little bit of a toe, get to the inside cleanly, or pinch somebody and go around the outside. We have seen that happen. But turn 12 leading into the stadium section at this track, hugely crucial corner here. And coming out of 11 makes that corner massive as well.
Yeah, that's right, getting that exit speed. But we saw yesterday, certainly Jeff Ricker had a little bit more top speed than the BMWs. I think the Nissan's pretty strong there, but over the lap, the BMW is very strong and obviously has the strength in numbers in this field today.
In this very twisty section called the stadium section here, you can make passes here, but it comes through some real creativity. You've got to, get the guy off his rhythm in front of you a little bit, and then you got to be willing to stick your nose in a surprise location.
Yeah, and we saw that a little bit yesterday. We were actually discussing, Greg, Johann Schwartz was kind of exceeding the track limits by defending the lead, and I spoke to him on the grid. I said, did you get a call from the stewards last night? He said, no, and he said, if I hadn't opened my hands and sort of like gone off the road a little bit, there would have been contact. So that's his version of events, which I'm certainly cool with. But I think the stewards are going to be on top of that, because there's a way, it's like someone gets down the inside, you just drive off the racetrack and you maintain the lead. So there's a fine line there between exceeding the track limits and just avoiding contact.
Absolutely, and it's the material advantage, according to the rule book. If you gain a material advantage, then you can be given a warning or a penalty. Pace car pulls off at turn 19, stages out there until the first lap is through turn 1. So now it's up to Paul Terry in that Nissan, the Paul Terry trucking machine from Reardon Racing. Onto the front straight we go. This will be a 40-minute timed event, and the start stand is farther up. You're going to come across, you'll see the line right there. That's the finish and timing line, but the start stand, the only time a flag will fly is right there. The green flag is out, and we are racing, and a nice move immediately by Toby Grahovic. He wants to come up the inside, and if he can make this work, he can go from third to the lead, and he has the inside position, Cal, but this is where it gets sketchy, and everybody needs to stick.
Look at Johann Schwartz all the way, riding the cushion around the outside, gets forced off a little bit there with Jeff Ricker taking that wide line. So Toby Grahovic goes to the lead. Our pole sitter drops to third.
Oh, then there's contact. And that was Terry. I don't think you realized Johann was there. And now
Schwartz is involved as well. Got sandwiched there, nowhere to go.
Yeah, and I think he clipped the Joseph Federal Nissan when he went around. Well, that's what we were talking about.
These wet conditions, you want the car to react, and you cannot get it to turn and respond like you like it to. And now there's another spinner right here in the middle of the pack. Greasy conditions.
That was Peter Atwater, one of the drivers we were talking about. As you said, greasy conditions, slick tires, and some of the drivers already paying the price. And you can see the pole sitter Terry has recovered, but has lost at least 10 spots here, and he's got work cut out for him along with Johann. It's going to be fun watching those two work up through the field.
Is there any damage? I think there's another spinner.
Now the 09 of Greg Nitzkowski in the DRS BMW. That's in that section of the S's where just every S gets tighter and tighter and tighter.
And the little nudge there on Terry where there was contact between he and Schwartz would probably been fine if it was perfectly dry, but he held on to it for a long time, and eventually the car went around. Schwartz tried to take evasive action as the car to his other flank and nowhere to go.
Absolutely, I think you're right. That touch and dry conditions would have been simply that. And you can see Johann now has his work cut out for him. But you look up front, and there is Toby Grahovic's got a little bit of a margin. He's been able to open up over Jeff Ricka. And then the two-car battle behind him, and that is the Zane Hodgson, number 4, I think. And he has come, if that's right, come from 11th on the grid here with all of that action in front of him. He found a couple of clear lanes, and he did. He's now 3rd.
Yeah, he's done a great job. He's actually being coached here this weekend by Cameron Lawrence, and Cameron has a lot of experience. And look at Rick, they're completely sideways.
Well, and that blue and white BMW, that Copart BMW, that's Cameron Evans. Remember, he started on the dry tires, and he has leapfrogged up the order as well from 7th into this battle right now.
Wet weather tires could be a bit of an advantage in these greasy conditions, because I believe that the wet weather tire has not only got grooves, of course, but also a little softer compound, which could be even more of a factor on this damp racetrack right now.
Yeah, exactly. And the last car in the shot here, the lighter blue blend on the side that says Copart, that's Chandler Hull, his teammate, both of them starting on those wet tires. And they have both made huge jumps up through the field, as you would imagine. And, of course, some help with some of the front-running cars having little offs here and there.
The key is going to be, do those wet weather tires overheat? You've got the tread blocks and they move around, and suddenly they get to a point that's like driving on ice, even though you think, oh, it's a softer tire, it's got the grooves. If the track dries out, it just cannot stand the loads that the car is putting through the tire at that point.
So you can see right there, the 82 of Evans with those wet weather tires was able to just be more aggressive on the brakes into one and just went right by Hodgson. As does Hull now, working that outside line.
Yeah, just gave the car on the inside enough room so there wasn't contact like we saw on the opening lap between Schwartz and Terry.
Yeah, so that's impressive. Evans up from 7th to 3rd now, Hull up from 10th to 4th, and then Hodgson up from 11th to 5th. And that gap, there's a sizable gap now back after all of the incidents up at turn 1. Paul Terry has already worked his way back up into 6th, Cal. But now he's some 9 seconds back. There they come. That next group. Oh, look at this.
Pass there.
Yep, that's those dry wet weather tires versus the dries on Ricka's car.
Yep, just cutting through there. Nothing you can do about it. For Ricker, he's just got to stay calm, and hopefully the racetrack will come to him a little bit.
Interesting run yesterday.
You'll see some very innovative lines, even under braking. We saw Grahovic coming down into turn 12 where he's heading to right now on the previous lap, braking in the middle of the road. If you run the regular racing line, it's been worn out, so it's a lot smoother. It doesn't give the aggregate and the grip in the tire when you're in these type of conditions. So you forget about the ideal line, Greg, and you think more about where is the grip in the racetrack.
And here's that lead group, and you can see right now that Evans is starting to work over Grahovic. Here's another look at the start.
See the leaders there. It's almost 4 wide as they get to the brake zone. You see Schwartz here, picture left, going around the long way, and then he just gets kind of moved off line here as Rick is looking for grip. Right there. I think Schwartz could have kind of tucked in a little bit earlier, but had nowhere to go, and then suddenly that's when he gets together with Terry as they head further down through the S's.
Yeah, watch it here. Terry doesn't even see Johan there.
Yeah, and he just doesn't give him a lane. Paul Terry goes for the apex, and Johan was filling that gap. Then he gets sandwiched there a little bit, contact with the other Nissan.
It looked like Terry and Johan maybe got together a second time, and that's what pitched Johan into Federal. But now, at least that's all been sorted. Of course, we had a couple of other spins, but look at this. Grahovic in massive defense mode right now, and Evans just goes right around the outside of him.
Yeah, that's just the tire working for him right now. Key for Grahovic, he has to realize that, not fight too hard, don't have contact, just try and hang with these guys. A lot of time on the clock, and the racetrack should come to the slick runners versus the wets.
Certainly turned this race kind of upside down and on its ear, which is interesting to watch play out here. And I think you're right. And Toby's pretty savvy. I think he recognizes, all right, just don't get too untoward here. Things will come back to me.
I think the key is also having the knowledge. Hopefully the team are aware who started on the wet tires and give Toby that information. Like, don't worry about it. Don't try and chase them thinking they're on the same tire as you. They have an advantage over you right now, but just try and keep them in sight. And hopefully as this track dries out a little bit, they'll come back to you.
There you see Johan Schwartz fighting his way back up through the pack, just going around his teammate at one point, Richard Zulman, and now I believe has also been able to get around Federal, so he is starting a real charge up through the field.
I spoke to Johan on the grid, and they believe they got the fuel pump issue sorted that they had yesterday where they had to run full tanks, and but he said we're not sure, so I believe they're pretty much tapped up on fuel. That's probably about 70, 80 pounds more weight that they need to carry over normal, but probably not such a factor in these conditions as it would be in ideal dry track conditions.
Looking at some of the times here, the last laps, Terry running a 2:51, Schwartz a 2:52. Up front, Evans and Hull are the only guys below 250 thus far, into the 240s, with Evans clicking off at 246. And spin there. It's the 21 of John Allen, the Autotechnic Alabama. Oh, that may be a little target fixation by Nitzkowski, seeing a car there and lifting. It is slick, isn't it?
It is, and we can't really see it, a defined line, but once you get off it, you're going to go for a ride. It's really treacherous conditions, not ideal for some of these drivers who do not have a lot of experience.
Back up at front, the two Copart BMWs from Bimmer World Racing. Talking about Cameron Evans, who's out front. He is a class winner at the 24 Hours of Thunder Hill. He won the June Sprints, which is a pretty prestigious SCCA club event in 2017 in a BMW Spec E46. He's got a lot of experience in these cars, just hasn't done a lot of pro racing, and managed to get together when they decided to make an effort in this program with Copart. They decided he has been a longtime friends with James Clay at Bimmer World, and said that would be the program to go with, and they have put it together. And of course, he is the son of the legendary broadcaster Steve Cameron as well.
So Evans certainly a great broadcaster. So racing ran through those bloodlines for many, many years, and he's doing an amazing job. I think the key for these wet weather runners right now is not to overheat those tires. So if there is any dampness out there that they can search for, just try and cool them down. There's not any big puddles that you're going to run through, but try and stay on the wetter line without compromising your lap times too much. A lot of time on the clock for these guys to come back at them on the slicks.
Grahovic with Ricker right there. Those two guys just biding their time, really, aren't they, as you said?
Yeah, and their car's going to start to feel better and better, give them some confidence, give them the ability to push. I mean, this battle we're looking at right now for the third position could in fact be the battle for the win, because we would anticipate these slick runners to actually get an advantage in the second half of this race and come back at the leaders.
And for the others that were obviously fast but have fallen back due to those incidents, they're far enough back at this stage that they would really need a full course caution of some sort to bring them up into play. With these conditions, that's not necessarily out of the realm of possibility, is it?
Anything's possible today.
So one last thing I wanted to mention about Evans, when he was following his dad around and, of course, caught the racing bug. Steve Evans, Cameron said, I decided to go a little different way for a while, and for 6 years when he was younger, he raced speedway motorcycles. And he said, that's how I got my juice going. He said, eventually making my way into cars, of course, and doing a nice job right now.
Should be good in these conditions,
yes,
then. Those boys like to run it a little loose.
So just
look at Ricker really deep on the brakes there. He's feeling feisty. As we said, he's running the full dry setup on this car, and he said it's probably not ideal, but his race car is coming to them, and those leaders are not disappearing. So expect this to be a battle with 4 cars for the lead here shortly.
So Grahovic trying to hang on to third over a persistent Ricker, who drops off just a little bit here. And looking at the times here, the guys up front on those wet tires down to the 242s. Then the next group, Grahovic, Ricky, and the 245s, but Schwartz has uncorked a 243 as well. So he is showing some serious pace.
Yeah, he is, and for him, he's got to think big picture as well about the championship. Has the points lead right now based on his win here yesterday.
And watching this Copart BMW work up front, obviously it was a great strategy call for this team, Ryan.
Dave Wagner is the team engineer for Bimmer World, and I wanted to check in with you. As far as I could tell, you guys were the only ones to start this race on wets. What went into that decision?
Just experience from yesterday, the way the qualifying session went, and the way the track looked in the areas we were. It might be the right decision, might be the wrong decision. At the beginning, it looks good, but we're probably going to have to pay towards the end, so we're trying to make a gap. So the other thing was just the temperature. It's so cold. It's been cold and wet all weekend. It's misty. We decided to go that way and decided to stick with it.
What are you coaching your drivers about in terms of trying to keep these tires under them as the track starts to dry out?
Just being offline on straightaways, find a little bit of water, get them cooled down. But in general, they've already got the decision. They know when they're starting to get hot. They know when they need to find water, get offline a hair. Just because you've got rains, you can be on a slightly wetter spot. Take care of them, see if we can do it.
Were you surprised no other teams elected to use this strategy?
Yes, I am, and I'm actually surprised at the number of people that told us they were going to be on wets on the paddock and then didn't do it.
Interesting. Some gamesmanship.
When you're competing with people, be careful when they tell you they're going to do something.
All right, we'll let you get back to work. Thanks.
Yeah, and Ryan, I'll tell you, that turning point may have occurred here because Grahovic, Ricka down in the 242s as well, and Johann Schwartz at a 240. So it may be turning into a dry tire race track right now.
Yeah, I think this is the turning point, as you put it correctly, Greg. Those guys in third and fourth are going to catch these leaders here pretty quick, and there's going to be a tougher road for the wet weather tires right now because the track is dry now. We saw down that straightaway, just like the engineer said, for that team. You just got to search for any dampness out there, but there's no big puddles to run through. You're just trying to keep those tire temperatures down as best you can.
Here's a look at Zane Hodgson, sitting in a 5th spot right now, a little bit behind this group of 4 up at the front, and he has Johann Schwartz closing on him in a big hurry. And then here are the 2 Nissans, 2 different teams, Federal and Terry, right there, and they are starting to close now on Hodgson. So Schwartz, I think, may have gone around. He did. He is clear. So that puts Johann now up into the top 5. Great comeback drive here. And these 2 Nissans, the Reardon Nissan, the number 33, and the number 23 from Techsport, duking it out right now for that 7th spot.
Well, for Schwartz, what he needs to have happen is for Grahovic and Ricker to get stymied a little bit, getting through those wet weather tired runners, and maybe give him the opportunity to close that gap and be a factor for a podium here at the end.
This is good stuff here right now, obviously, for the 6th spot, too. Hodgson hanging on to it, that Lone Star Racing BMW. And then these two Nissans having a solid scrap. Schwartz comes through. Now he's dropped into the 237s, Cal. And he is moving. Now Ricka and has turned to 238 on that last lap. Grahovic, a low 239. So, yeah, the speed is there at this stage.
And a rule of thumb, and I know every racetrack is different, every racetrack has a different length, but when you get to within about 10 seconds of a dry time, that's typically the switching point. Like if you're in a session, it's like, okay, we're running lap times within 10 seconds of a slick time, it's time to go to slicks. If you're like 12, 15 seconds off the pace, it's probably still a wet weather tire game.
Right. Okay.
We're within that now.
Ooh, problem for Federal. He was in that great battle with Terry. Finds himself off track momentarily. And that's a good point here. Yes, well, let's see if we can see. Was it just on his own? Yep. I think, yeah, he just got a little crossed up in those S's, Cal. Got behind in the steering, as they say.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, and once it starts to yaw like that and get sideways, there's no catching it in these conditions. So he can regroup, though. Nice thing about Circuit of the Americas, plenty of runoff room as we see this battle continue. Terry down to the inside. We know that this driver has a lot of pace based on his fast lap yesterday that secured pole position for the race today.
And he tightened the entrance into 11, but didn't overdrive the exit. Got a good drive off. And so he should, as you said, be able to make this pass stick. Meanwhile, up front, here we go. That is the number at 94 of Hull. Under attack now from Grahovic. Grahovic tries to get the nose down underneath. We're in that stadium section here. Battle for second, and Ricka right there.
Yeah, and the problem is for these slick runners in third and fourth that we're looking at right now, that car that in the middle there of Grahovic, when he starts to make these moves, he's going offline a little bit, and that's where it's still damp. So it's still tricky to get those positions, and this is really helping out Johann Schwartz, who's closing in on this whole gaggle up front.
And it's not exactly hurting Cameron Evans either, because those guys scrapping has allowed him to open up a little bit more of a margin here. Ooh, Toby thinking I got to surprise him somewhere. 19's a tough place to make it
Ricker,
work.
he's got to run. Can he dive to the inside? No, he flicks to the outside. Grahovic protects.
Boy, if Ricker can do the under here and get a good launch off this turn, this is going to be interesting up into turn one. Grahovic getting a little bit of a toe. Here he comes. Rickett doubling that.
Yeah, Ricker's just got to be patient. I think he's got a lot of pace in that Genesis's coupe here today. Potential winner. Just don't throw it all away by getting too aggressive. Johann Schwartz is really closing the gap. He's only 4 seconds behind this pack right now.
Oh, and Hull floats way, way wide, and that gives Rickett the opportunity. He comes through and jumps up now into third. You would think the smart move here would be for Rickett to just tuck in with Grahovic, not race him at this stage.
He's sideways. Big catch there, almost lost it.
Boy, and Schwartz is coming with a massive head of he just uncorked a 234.1, and that margin is evaporating in huge chunks. There he is.
Yeah, and I think for Grahovic, hopefully his team is telling him the progress of Johann Schwartz. They're saying, get to the front as soon as you can and lay the hammer down, because Johann Schwartz is cutting into this lead.
Yeah, he is making up big, big chunks. Look at that. I mean, he's basically caught this group already. And in these conditions, he's probably not taking too much out of those tires with it being damp.
And maybe the extra weight he's carrying with more fuel on board is actually aiding in these slick conditions.
All right, out of 11 and on this long run down into 12. And again, Evans
looking for dampness. It's a long way around, but he'll do anything he can to try and keep these tires underneath him. There's another look, I think, at Ricker here getting completely sideways.
That was a big save.
He's got a lot of talent. I really love the way he goes about his racing.
Look at Schwartz.
Does it on a low budget as Johann cuts up to the 4th position.
Boy, that was decisive, too. It was like, I cannot waste time. And he just went inside of Hull. And again, you have to say for Chandler, obviously, those wets now probably not the right tire here, clearly. And Johann, awfully capable talent here, and he is just augering his way up through now.
Yeah, approaching the halfway mark in this 40-minute race. So that's the gamble you play. And I think it's easier when you're a bit deeper in the pack on the grid to roll the dice a little bit. I think for the front runners, they felt like the slick tire would be the way to go at the end of this one. So they had to go that direction. For someone who's a bit deeper in the pack, you can just gamble a little bit further.
And now Evans has Grahovic and Ricka right on his 6 as we're looking at Schwartz coming up the hill. Turn 1. It's going to be interesting to see Grahovic. He's not necessarily close enough. He'd have to make an awfully straight line move to the apex, and opted not quite to do that, trying to get Evans maybe offline just a little bit. Evans not taking the bait that time.
No, I think this is where the wet weather tire is really going to struggle through these high-speed S's where you're going to really load the car. You can see it right there. Grahovic just has a lot more pace. That's where that wet weather tire is going to give up under the heavy loaded conditions. So Grahovic through to the lead. Ricka now looking for a way through as well. And Schwartz is right there. We're going to end up with the same 3 that we had, separated by half a second at the checkered flag yesterday. Suddenly battling it out for the lead right now.
And for Grahovic with Evans right now trying to hang on, this is an opportunity for Toby if he can create just a little bit of a gap. Sure is he's aware of it, and I'm sure his crew's saying go, go.
What you're going to find is for those wet weather tires, they're going to fall off a cliff here pretty quickly. I'm sure they're getting well overheated, and the harder and harder you push to defend. Ricka down to the inside, gets the wheel down enough so he doesn't get into the leader. That's the tough part about that entry.
Schwartz. Maybe an over-under.
Squares it off, yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
When you dive down the inside of someone, you're just praying that that car up ahead of you clears the apex because you got nowhere to go.
Look at that, Schwartz getting by both Evans and alongside Ricka. We know Ricka's got some good straight line, but right now Schwartz has position. Can he make this work?
Well, I think the key for Johan is he has to be patient. He's made a lot of progress. And look, he opens the door. That's cool. Evans fills it.
Yeah, he's not going quietly, that's for sure. Love it.
Good stuff.
Here's Chandler now, who's been shuffled back into the 5th spot. So it's Grahovic in the Blue B Classic BMW, Ricka in the Gen Racer Genesis Coupe, and Schwartz, yesterday's winner in the West Virginia University Rooster Hall BMW.
This is going to be fascinating because I think Schwartz is probably the most comfortable in these conditions, but I truly believe that maybe in outright pace the Genesis may have an edge here, so it's going to be a fascinating 18 minutes here to the checkered flag.
Coming around to complete yet another lap. This will be lap 8 in the books of this 40-minute timed event. Schwartz right now, obviously, I think if he can get by Ricka, he would certainly do it, but he wouldn't be all that upset to just have he and Ricka work together to close back up on Grahovic.
Suddenly that setup that Ricka chose is going to start to come into play.
Yeah.
Schwartz looks for the long way around. Needs to probably give it up. Remember, he had contact with Terry right there on the opening lap. The conditions are still not ideal to go side by side through that section of the racetrack.
He may have been a smidge more circumspect this time. Still showing he's willing to stick his nose in.
Well, you got to be patient. He's got a fast race car. He has the championship lead. He's thinking about the big picture. As we said yesterday, the 2 guys who finished ahead of him in the championship are not competing this year, so it should open up the door for Johan to go for the title, but as we can see, he's got some fierce competitors as well for the season.
I think for a moment there, Cal, it looked like Johan thought maybe I've got Ricka off his groove and was trying to figure out a way through. Ricka right there, that car step out sideways, cost him a little bit. Johan down to the inside. Can he make it stick on the exit of 11? And does so far, but now this is where Ricka, we know, has some motor.
You'd have to think that Johan's going to protect that left side of the road as they head down towards the brake zone for turn 12. Rick will start to pick up the draft now, and this is exactly the spot on the racetrack where that Genesis does seem to have a little bit of straight line advantage over the BMW. Will he force the issue and go to the inside? Johan's going to take it in super deep, try and gap him there so he can turn in.
Nicely done. By the way, just to note, the 33 of Terry just turned to 233 and is 3 to 4 seconds faster than Evans and Hull right now. So Terry, the pole sitter, might be up and joining some of this battling here in short order. Boy, went once Schwartz got through, he just ran down Grahovic in a hurry.
Yeah, he's loving life. He loves these conditions. He said, put on a show for us. He said, I hope not. He wants to stink it up and get to the front quickly.
Well, I think you're right. I think the extra weight that they may have to have been carrying in this car serving him well right now. Look at this.
It creates a bit more energy in the tire, which will give you grip. It's not ideal in terms of the ultimate peak, in terms of more weight you're carrying, harder to accelerate, harder to brake. But I think in these conditions, it will load the tire a little bit more for him and generate that tire temperature that you're searching for.
Definitely picking up a little bit of a toe.
Yeah, I think he's going to flick to the inside here and have a look maybe. He's got a good grip though.
Yes, he does.
I thought maybe he'd swing out wide and open up the door down through the S's. That did not happen. So, kettle of fish here in terms of he's now facing another BMW that's going to have similar handling characteristics to his car.
One thing I've noticed, I've watched Toby race for a long, long time, is he is smooth. You don't see that car stepping out a lot. He gets speed, does it very, very smoothly, which generally means end of the race. He's got some good tires on that car. So it's going to be an interesting study.
This is where Schwartz is really quick. Will he force the issue now or will he be patient? He's just sizing up Toby, just seeing where he may have a weakness around this circuit. 20 corners to think about it. It's a long lap here.
It is.
Circuit of the Americas.
3.4 miles.
Coming out, Rick, I still believe that the last 10 minutes of this race, when the track is going to be at its best, that Genesis may have a pace advantage over the BMW.
Watch him now in the braking zone. Rick has closed right up on the back of Johan. Looks, I think if he'd maybe made that first move and made it decisively, he might have been able to get to the inside. It was like he second-guessed himself just for a second there.
Yeah, you got to be careful because you end up in no man's land with nowhere to go and suddenly someone's turning down on you because they don't think you're committed. Grahovic really wide there. Schwartz has the ability to flick to the inside. He's being super patient now. So it was a risky move to make it on the entry to turn 15 in case someone comes down on you. You're going to turn them around and probably get a call for a penalty for avoidable contact.
Now into this triple apex right-hander. Turn 16, 17, 18 here. You're starting to see that little bit of dry.
Yeah, you can see the tire and the cars are starting to load up a little bit. Fast lap yesterday in the race was a 2:26.2 by Paul Terry that got him the pole. Those drivers in the 31s, 32 ranges, but I think they'll be under 30s here pretty quickly.
Well, as a matter of fact, into the 230s, Cal, at a 2:37 for Grahovic, takes fast lap away from Schwartz for the first time in a while. And now Terry takes it away from both of them at a 2:30.4.
I'm a big believer when you want to be patient, don't take any risk, but if you've got the pace and you sit behind someone for too long, you suddenly get into their rhythm and you lose that little rolling speed advantage that you may have had over them. So I'm sure for Johan, he'd like to get this lead and then control it a little bit to the flag. And he's probably concerned about Ricker as well, in terms of Ricker suddenly putting the pressure on both of these BMWs.
Yeah, we're starting to see those yellow seatbelt gloves in the cockpit of Johan's car here. He is sawing at that wheel, trying to figure out a way to get it. They've got a little bit of traffic up in front here. Grahovic gets to the inside, as does Schwartz. Nice job there. That was, I think, Bruce Wexler. I didn't get the car number, but he just opened that wheel way up, let them all get through.
Schwartz really sideways there, got out on the painted curbing and lost the grip off the right rear driving wheel of that BMW.
Sometimes you exit so close to the driver in front, and he's going to get to the inside this time on Grahovic, but you can see it's a lot damper where he is.
Look at Toby, just swings out wide. He's going to try and square it off on the exit of turn 12. Got to be careful, though. If he goes to the outside, he's going to open the door on Ricker to the inside for turn 13.
Boy, I'll tell you, Johan making that one stick. And what I was going to say was sometimes you exit a corner and you're so close onto a straight to the guy in front of you that you really can't get any serious benefit from the draft. And I wonder if him having that little moment allowed him a little bit of space to get a little bit more toe and actually make that move.
Yeah, for sure. He did it really nicely, and I think right now it's go time for Johann Schwartz, but Toby's not going away. His car actually looks to have a really good balance.
Yeah, it does.
And now that weight is going to have an adverse effect as we get into the dying moments of this race for Johann Schwartz.
New fast lap, by the way, by the Nissan of Steve Federal, the 23 tech sport entry at a 2:30.1. I have a feeling that's going to get evaporated right now as these guys come through, and I was wrong. Crew loving this here.
About a 9-second gap between him and the third place car of Jeff Ripka. And he's definitely shown that other adversities can regroup. seemed like the rain tire setup was the proper setup. Our leader on slick tires, our top 3 all on slick tires, is Johan Schwartz, Nick Logan, and Jeff Rickett. Just under 5 minutes to go. Starting to believe that Genesis Coupe's got something left for Johan Schwartz. Keep an eye on the red number 78, Gen Racer Genesis Coupe of Jeff Rickett. And Paul Terry's in the frame now. 6.4 seconds. Over the last 2 rounds. All except for the side to his third second. On the final lap of our GC America League.
He's just had that moment early on and cost him the track position. Here we see the little rub there into turn one. I thought Grohovic was going to get to the lead. He did get up to second and then put the pressure on Ricker for the win.
Yep, just that little bit of a bump. And ended up Schwartz running wide enough that it cost him the 2 spots as a result. Great drive by Ricker. And, you know, Jeff has not been able to put together a full season oftentimes in the past. When you win the opener, that can change the motivation to make that full season.
Yeah, and he actually shared with me on the pre-grid today, they got a development program with the Veloster, the Hyundai Veloster, and so we anticipate him finishing off the season with that car. So he said, I should be able to run the full season, but maybe split between 2 different platforms. But the way he's going right now, he may be reluctant to give up that Genesis Coupe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good car. There's no question about it. And, you know, you think about it here. Schwartz had a win in a third. Ricker now will win in a third. Grohovic 2 seconds. This is going to be really snug at the top right off the start of the championship here. Terry and the 2 Nissans of Terry and Federal complete the top 5, 4th, and 5th. Zane Hodgson doing a nice job hanging on into 6th there. 7th, Strymer, who had to come back from deep in the pack after his issues, doing a nice job. They were yesterday's issues. He's still got a decent lap. Nimkov in 8th, Uretsky in 9th, and Richard Zulman up in the top 10. And unfortunately for Evans and Hull, those wet weather tires at the end of this race were clearly absolutely rooted.
Yeah, their fast laps were like 10 seconds off Terry's, so that shows what the pace is. And that's that 10-second spread that you're talking about between wets and dries, essentially.
Yeah, just another fascinating battle at the sharp end of things, and who knows? Had we had 2-3 more laps of this one, Terry was, you know, catching him and passing him's different, but boy, the pace he had.
Yeah, bodes well for the rest of the championship season,
doesn't it? Though
4 of these drivers have shown pace here this weekend and the ability to win.
And Federal in the Nissan, I think he's somebody that, you know, with that 5th place finish, showing some good speed as well. I think we've got a good blend unfolding. There may be a huge numbers advantage for the BMW M Cup cars, and they're certainly quick, but it's not like they're just absolutely dominant, and that's going to make this an exciting championship. And here is Jeff Ricker.
He's going to be excited.
You bet he is.
It's a great victory for him.
Savvy. I mean, patient when he needed it,
but he made that move.
Yeah, you got to love it. That was fun to watch, and his timing on that pass was superb. Wasn't it?
Move up to the inside into turn 1. He got really good clean exit that lap on at this front straightaway, and made it stick. Really cool.
Off comes the helmet and Hans device. And Ryan Marine standing down there with our race winner.
Well, Jeff, what a wild race that was, start to finish. But take us through the winning move. How did you get it done?
You know, I didn't know if I was going to stick it in the inside but the ABS was on, and I just like, it's awesome. There's no words to explain it. I mean, I just threw it in there, and I said, you know what, Johan's such a great driver, and he'll know I'm there, and it just stuck, and I just ran it out, and I came here. I'm in first place.
How about the conditions throughout the race today? How variable were they from start to finish?
So as soon as we got out and the start of the race, I was radioing to my crew chief, Mike, and I said, man, we have the wrong tire. I mean, we need to be on reins. The Beamer Wheel guys, they had on the reins, and they're going to come through the field. And sure enough, here they came, and we were playing catch up. But halfway through the race, I mean, the tires just started coming alive. There was starting to get a dry line, and then it was just all game from there. And we're just trying to chug around and do what we had to do.
Thanks for putting on the show for us. Fantastic race. Well done.
Thank you.
It was that. What an absolutely great show they put on. And that crew has got to be elated. And looking forward to seeing this unfold now for the rest of the season. Let's take a look at the provisional race 2 results. Once again, Ricka in the Genesis Coupe taking the win over the BMWs of Grahovic and Schwartz. Completing the podium, the 2 Nissans of Paul Terry, and what pace he had. And Federal ending up completing the top 5. Then Hodgson, Streimer, Nimkoff, Uretsky, and Zulman completing the top 10. And yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this one unfold as the season goes. Now, this class, there's an invitational that they can come and run if they like to, I believe, at St. Pete. But the next time they run, I think, will be Virginia International Raceway. What a classic road course that is, and watching these guys there should be great fun as we take a look at some of the highlights.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to have quite the room to go 5 wide at VIR, but nonetheless, it's a classic road racing venue. Everyone enjoys going there. First-class facility run by some great people, but hopefully we'll see more of this battling for the lead that we saw all day long in this TC run today.
Boy, it was something, wasn't it? And there you can see an initial contact. Schwartz, that little wiggle, and right here, I think he did get clipped by Terry, and that's what threw him into Federal. And both Schwartz and Terry put together immense comeback drives.
A little bit lucky that he didn't get major damage there in the melee that followed with the touch.
And then there was the move by Grahovic that put him up into the 2nd spot.
Yeah, just those wet weather tired runners were gradually losing grip, losing pace about halfway through this 40-minute event. So Jeff Ricker said, he said, I was on the radio saying we were on the wrong tire. Well, you were for that moment, but you certainly weren't on the wrong tire, as we see a little moment there. Probably didn't feel like he's on the right tire when he's completely sideways through the high-speed S's.
Well, it was interesting. After that, he calmed down, and then when the opportunity presented here, as we said, down into turn 1, late in the going, makes the move through, and Grahovic squares up underneath and ended up making him an opportunity to run up into the 2nd spot, and they would finish in that order in an absolutely fabulous run and a great opening of the Touring Car America's Championship for the TC class touring cars. Look forward to seeing them as the season unfolds. See you, everybody.